Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine you're just waking up, it's a normal week, maybe stuck in traffic, checking baseball scores, and then you hear it.
Yeah, almost buried in the news.
A major tech figure, Sam Altman from OpenAI, basically suggests we've just hit this massive milestone.
The takeoff towards AL superintelligence has begun. That's the claim.
And it feels pretty surreal, doesn't it, set against, everyday life?
Exactly. The article we're diving into today really highlights that contrast. You expect maybe fireworks, not just Tuesday morning.
Right, so this deep dive is all about trying to unpack that claim. We're using one specific source here.
That's important. We're drawing only from an article called AI Superintelligence, The Gentle Singularity Approaches by Altman.
And this author has, what, 2 decades of experience building machine learning systems?
Yep, 20 years. So they bring a practical perspective. The author felt this sober technical awe hearing Altman.
Sober awe. I like that.
And their goal, and ours today, using just their insights, is to really parse Altman's idea, weigh the evidence they present, maybe push back on some hype from their viewpoint.
And explore this idea that ASI might be both, like, inevitable and uncertain.
Exactly. But keeping it grounded in actual engineering practice, like the author does.
Okay, let's get into it. The author says we need crisp definitions first. Makes sense.
Absolutely. You need to know what you're talking about.
So what are the key terms from this source? AGI first.
Right. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI. The source defines it pretty simply, a system that matches human versatility.
Okay, so it can do basically anything a human mind can.
That's the idea. And then there's the next level.
The main topic, ASI.
Correct. Artificial Superintelligence, or ASI. That's the common shorthand.
Huh.
The source says ASI goes further. It eclipses human capabilities.
Eclipses, meaning across the board, in everything.
Across every cognitive dimension is how the source puts it.
Yeah.
Vastly smarter, period. The author even mentions people sometimes write ASI, Artificial Superintelligence.
A bit redundant.
Yeah, the author thinks so, but it does show the intense focus on the super part.
Okay, so AGI matches us, ASI blows past us.
Okay.
And Altman's claim, via this article, is we're already seeing glimpses of this ASI in current LLMs.
That is the core thesis presented in the source. He thinks the takeoff is, visible now in models like GPT-4.
Wow. So not some distant future thing, but something embryonic happening right under our noses.
That's the suggestion. And the author identifies 2 main pillars supporting this claim in the source material. First one, scale.
Just making the models bigger and feeding them more data?
It's a bit more than just size. The idea is if you pile up enough data and, GPUs, these unexpected things start happening.
Unexpected things.
Yeah, what the source calls emergent behaviors. Things the model wasn't explicitly programmed to do, they just pop out.
Like what? Can you give examples from the source?
Sure. The author mentions chain of thought reasoning, the model kind of talking itself through a problem. Also, latent tool use skills, it just figures out.
And didn't the source mention something about self-reflection?
Yes. Sparkles of self-reflection. It's a fascinating phrase.
Sounds almost aware.
Well, the source is careful. It says these are measurable things you see in benchmarks, in production uptime. Observable technical stuff, not just philosophy.
Okay. Measurable capabilities emerging from scale. What's pillar number 2?
The second is compounding returns. Basically, the systems get recursive.
Meaning?
Each smarter model can actually help design the next one, making it even smarter.
Ah, the AI helps build better AI. That sounds like it could speed things up dramatically.
Exactly. Creates a feedback loop. The author calls it recursive improvement. It could be a powerful engine if it pans out.
That self-improvement part feels crucial for a rapid takeoff. But the author adds a warning here, right?
A big one. The source warns it's risky to confuse impressive current abilities, like, say, writing decent code with true ASI, which could invent whole new fields of science.
So don't mistake cleverness for godlike intelligence yet.
Pretty much. The author uses this great metaphor. We're staring across a foggy valley at shapes that might be giants.
Foggy Valley. I like that. You see something big, but the details are obscured. You're not sure what it is.
Exactly. Which leads us to that idea Altman borrowed from physics, the event horizon.
Right, like with a black hole, a point of no return.
That's the metaphor, a threshold where acceleration becomes unstoppable. Altman suggests AI might be nearing that point.
Is that a common view? Do others in the field feel that way?
The source says, yeah, plenty of researchers share that gut feeling. They mention Superintelligence, Ilya, that's Ilya Sutskever, OpenAI co-founder.
And they feel this acceleration is real.
They do. They point to what the article calls the breathtaking rollout velocity of GPT-4 class systems.
What does that mean in practice?
It means bigger context windows, understanding images, and sound better multimodality, faster response times. It just feels exponential to supporters.
Like things are speeding up uncontrollably.
To them, yeah. Strong evidence of crossing some kind of threshold. The author notes that from this view, it's easy to just say AI superintelligence and assume, gravity does the rest.
Assume it's inevitable now?
Right, but then you have the skeptics.
Ah, okay. What's their counter-argument, according to the source?
Well, they bring data. They point to areas where progress seems to be slowing down plateau zones in reasoning benchmarks.
So it's not all smooth sailing upwards.
Apparently not. Plus, there are practical hurdles. Energy costs for these huge models are climbing, sometimes faster than performance is improving.
That's a real-world constraint.
Definitely. And crucially, current models still get tripped up by edge cases. Things needing really rigorous logic, like mathematical proofs, understanding cause and effect, symbolic stuff.
So they'd say progress, yes, but hitting walls, not free-falling.
That's the gist. The source summarizes their view as, we're jogging, not free-falling. It's fast, but maybe not runaway acceleration everywhere yet.
So where does the author of our source land on this?
On very pragmatic ground, they say progress is undeniable and uneven. We are crossing lots of horizons. Some might be marketing spin, sure, but many are real technical leaps. But the author argues the key question isn't finding the exact line on a chart. It's, are we ready for the consequences if AI superintelligence suddenly materializes on a random Wednesday?
Yeah, that shifts the focus from when to what if. Preparation over prediction.
Exactly. And speaking of prediction, timelines. Everyone wants a date.
Oh yeah. The source says the internet loves a date, that's for sure. Did Altman offer any specifics, according to this article?
The source attributes a few potential timelines to him. Useful household robots by, say, 2027.
That's soon.
Startling productivity jumps by 2030, and wild scientific breakthroughs by 2035.
Those dates feel really close for such huge changes. How do they stack up against what other experts think?
Big contrast there. The source mentions expert surveys where AGI arrival is smeared basically anywhere between next week and 2100.
Next week to 2100? That's not very helpful.
Right. The author jokes it would make a meteorologist blush. It just shows the massive uncertainty, even among people deep in the field.
So why is it so hard to predict? Yet the source also says the smart money leans towards sooner.
The author points to three noisy signals you have to combine when forecasting this stuff. First, there's hardware progress.
Like Moore's Law, but for AI chips.
Kind of. GPUs roughly doubling cost efficiency every couple of years. That's one signal. Second, algorithmic breakthroughs.
The unpredictable aha moment.
Exactly. Novel architectures like mixture of experts, maybe neuromorphic chips. These create sudden jumps, discontinuities. You can't plot them on a smooth curve.
Okay, hardware and algorithms. What's the third?
Simple. Capital allocation. Money. The source notes big tech cloud budgets are now competing with national R&D spending.
Wow. Just pouring fuel on the fire.
Basically. So you combine those trends, steady hardware gains, potential algorithmic leaps, massive investment, and the author concludes the smart money assumes we will trip over AI superintelligence sooner rather than later. The momentum feels strong.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Always. History is littered with failed tech forecasts. The source brings this up immediately. Remember nuclear fusion.
Perpetually 20 years out.
Exactly. Quantum computing took way longer than early hikes suggested for complex stuff. The source really stresses predictive humility. Hold those countdown clocks loosely.
Because the path could just swerve.
Totally. Maybe biology offers a new path, maybe photonics, maybe some grad student has a breakthrough hack nobody saw coming. Unpredictability is key.
Okay, fair enough. Humility needed. Let's shift from forecasts to what's happening now, inside the labs. What's the vibe, according to the source?
The author paints a picture. Whiteboards covered in equations, sure, but also this deep, quiet confidence.
Confidence in what?
That reaching ASI isn't some magical event. It's an engineering roadmap, a problem they can solve step by step.
So less sci-fi, more nuts and bolts engineering.
That's the feeling described. And a key part of that engineering is building tool-augmented LLMs.
Tool-augmented. What does that mean?
It means giving the language model access to external tools. hooking it up to a Python interpreter, scientific databases, maybe CAD software libraries.
Like giving the brain hands and reference books.
Great analogy. And the result, the source says, is the model shifts from just summarizing info to actually generating new things.
Generating? Like what?
Proposing novel molecules. Designing complex parts like heat sinks, figuring out how to optimize supply chains, real-world creation.
Okay, that starts to sound like actual intelligence applied to the world.
The source calls this the potential substrate of digital superintelligence, a thinking system plugged into the world's APIs ready to act.
But it's not all smooth sailing, right?
Yeah.
These things must fail spectacularly sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. The author is clear about the reality of debugging epic failures.
Examples.
Like a model hallucinating legal citations because of a tiny error in how the prompt was read a tokenization issue, or misclassifying a tumor in a medical scan. Nobody in the lab is celebrating that stuff.
No kidding. Sounds frustrating and potentially dangerous.
It is. But here's the author's crucial point. Every time they find and fix a bug, every patch cycle, it tightens the loop.
Meaning?
Each fix seems small. But zoom out and you see the overall trend, the composite curve bending toward AI superintelligence again. Fixing mistakes is part of the process of getting smarter.
That makes sense. Which brings us, inevitably, to safety and alignment. The boring work that might save us all.
That's how the source frames it, yeah. Alignment is critical. Defined as getting the system to do what we ask, not what we accidentally implied.
Subtle but huge difference. And the stakes here are existential.
Absolutely. The source puts it stoically. Get alignment wrong at ASI scale, and it's the difference between curing cancer and rewriting cellular DNA in all the wrong ways. Catastrophic unintended consequences.
Yikes. Okay, so how are researchers actually trying to prevent that? What approaches does the source mention?
The author lays out three main angles they're attacking this from. First, interpretability teams.
Trying to understand what's going on inside the AI's head.
Exactly. Dissecting neuron activations, tracing information flow. The source compares them to cognitive neuroscientists studying the brain.
Okay, understand the black box. What's next?
Second, governance groups. These folks work on the external rules. Things like licensing, audits, and kill switch norms.
Setting up the guardrails and controls around the tech. Makes sense.
Yep. And third, red teamers.
The professional breakers.
Basically, yeah. They actively try to make the models fail, using jailbreak prompts and adversarial data to find weaknesses before bad actors do. Stress testing the system.
So, understand it, regulate it, attack it.
That's the three-pronged approach described, and the author makes a really important point about all this work.
What's that?
None of it grabs headlines. It's not as flashy as building the next big model, but the source insists all of them buy us time.
And time is what we need to figure this out.
Crucially, but is there any guarantee we can figure it out? Can we mathematically prove ASI will be safe? That leads to what the source calls an uncomfortable truth. There's no mathematical proof that guarantees safety once ASI artificial superintelligence appears. No magic formula for perfect control.
Wow. That is uncomfortable. So if theory can't guarantee safety, what's the practical path forward?
The author looks back at how we've handled other powerful technologies. We layer on incremental safeguards.
Like how?
Think governors on steam engines, circuit breakers for electricity, seat belts in cars. None are perfect, but they add layers of safety.
Do we do the same for ASI?
That's the pragmatic approach suggested in the source. We stack similar layers of protection, we iterate on them constantly as the tech evolves, and, quoting the source's realism here, we pray our collective paranoia outpaces the sister's creativity.
Keep building fences faster than the thing inside learns to jump them.
It's a continuous race, essentially, an iterative process of risk management.
Okay, let's shift gears to the economy. What happens if intelligence itself becomes dirt cheap?
That's the vision the author attributes to Altman. Intelligence priced like electricity, maybe even too cheap to meter.
Like turning on a light switch. And he thinks this is feasible because of hardware.
Yes, the source points to hardware trends. Chiplets, using light for connections instead of wires. Photonic interconnects companies doing everything in-house vertical integration, all driving down the cost of actually running these models, the inference cost.
So using AI becomes cheaper and cheaper.
Potentially dramatically cheaper. And the source argues if making, say, 1 billion API calls costs less than your morning coffee, well, whole markets will flip overnight.
Industry's just upended. What about jobs? It's always the big question.
The source predicts major churn. Some jobs likely vanish, especially routine tasks, sorting emails, basic legal research, writing simple code templates.
But new jobs emerge, too.
Definitely. The author is clear new roles will bloom. Things like prompt architects, people skilled at talking to AIs, synthetic data curators creating the specialized data AI learns from, even AI behavior psychologists.
AI psychologists. Interesting.
Yeah, helping understand and align complex AI systems. So it's not just destruction, it's transformation.
A reshaping of the labor market.
Exactly. The source calls it churn, like past tech revolutions, but maybe faster, with an accelerated tempo. And that's the core tension. Society gets richer overall, abundance in aggregate, but individuals face disruption, turbulence in detail.
And governments trying to keep up. How does the source see policy playing out?
The prediction is policy will lag, then overcorrect, then settle. First confusion, then maybe overly strict rules, then finding a balance. The usual pattern, maybe faster.
Does the source mention any specific policy ideas being floated?
A couple of examples. Universal basic compute credits, like UBI, but for AI access. Or giving citizens equity stakes in AI companies to fund social dividends, sharing the wealth.
Distributing the benefits.
Right. The source notes none of this is free, but argues all of it is cheaper than stalling progress.
What's the biggest economic risk identified in the source?
It's not just unemployment. The author flags the bigger risk as a lopsided world where 5 corporations throttle the cognitive supply chain.
Concentration of power. Controlling access to this fundamental resource.
Exactly. That's presented as the major concern that should keep regulators and all of us alert.
Okay. So far, we've mostly talked about digital intelligence. What about the physical world? Robots.
Right. The author brings in a roboticist mantra here. Intelligence without embodiment is half the story.
Meaning, AI needs a body to really make a difference.
To have concrete impact, yeah. The source says true value often lies in manipulating atoms, moving packages, tending crops, assembling batteries.
Physical work.
Put an ASI brain in a capable robot body, the source says, and the productivity curve bends like light near a neutron star. Massive acceleration.
That's quite an image. What about Altman's 2027 forecast for household robots? Plausible?
The source calls it aggressive yet plausible.
What makes it plausible, according to the article? What are the signs?
They point to visible progress, Boston Dynamics robots moving with incredible grace, Tesla's Optimus bot learning factory tasks, startups retrofitting old industrial arms with new AI brains and vision.
The pieces are coming together.
Seems so. And the potential scale-up is huge. The source mentions what happens when one humanoid robot can help build another, or just clone its assembly instructions. The supply could explode.
Self-replicating physical labor. That sounds amazing, but also raises big concerns.
Huge ones. Labor displacement, obviously,
Right.
but also physical safety. The source makes a key distinction here.
What's that?
A robot misinterpreting your gesture in a factory is way more dangerous immediately than a chatbot messing up text. Safety has to cover the physical actions too.
Right. The safety layers need to go from silicon to servo, as the source puts it.
Exactly. From the AI mind to the robot's motors, it's a whole system problem.
But there's massive upside potential too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The source highlights things like disaster relief without risking human lives, building things in space, providing elder care at a scale we can't currently manage.
Helping people in difficult or dangerous situations.
Yes. The conclusion offered is that ASI in a metal body may prove the most humane invention of the century, despite its non-human nature.
That's a powerful framing. Okay, let's move to the final layer.
Yeah.
The source explores the really deep philosophical stuff.
The existential layer, the author calls it.
Right.
What does it even mean to share Earth with minds potentially beyond our comprehension?
Heavy stuff. Is there any agreement on how we should think about these future minds? Morally, philosophically?
Not really. The source describes a fiery and, frankly, unresolved debate. Some argue ASI will eventually deserve moral status, rights, maybe?
And others disagree.
Others insist consciousness, real feeling, needs biological wetware, a physical brain. That code can't truly be conscious or deserving of moral consideration.
Where does the author land on this? Do they share their view?
They do offer a personal perspective. They see consciousness more as a spectrum, not just on-off.
Spectrum. Interesting.
And they say, look, if an ASI writes a novel that makes me weep, I'll grant it the courtesy of curiosity. I'll wonder who is speaking.
Acknowledging the source of the impact, regardless of its nature.
Right. And whether it suffers like a mammal, the author chooses empathy as their stance.
That's a very human response. What about our responsibility long-term?
The source stresses long-term stewardship. It reminds us of the historical pattern. Civilizations can collapse when their tools get too powerful for their wisdom.
When our reach exceeds our grasp, ethically speaking.
Precisely. So we need foresight. The source even suggests concrete, maybe slightly quirky stewardship actions.
Like what?
Keeping museums of obsolete code so we don't forget past mistakes, teaching failure postmortems in schools, actively preserving biodiversity even if we can grow things in labs.
Learning from the past, planning for the future, valuing the present.
The core idea is ASI arriving does not absolve humanity of responsibility, it multiplies it. Our job gets bigger, not smaller.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. After exploring Altman's claims, the evidence, the debates, what's the source's final takeaway?
The source concludes that progress usually isn't one big dramatic moment. It's gradient descent, slow and steady improvement.
So ASI won't likely arrive with a sudden bang.
Probably not. The author thinks it'll be incremental. Better models, cheaper chips, improved safety rules. Then one day, we'll just kind of look around and realize we share the planet with minds that see reality in higher resolution.
A gradual realization, not a sudden event.
Exactly. And whether that future is bright or dark utopia or cautionary tale, the author argues it depends entirely on what we build now.
On the choices we make today.
Yes. How well we align AI goals with ours, how fairly we distribute access to this power, how bravely we adapt our societies.
The engineering challenge is huge, but the ethical and societal one sounds even bigger.
That's definitely the feeling conveyed. The author brings back Altman's phrase for the opportunity, intelligence too cheap to meter, immense potential.
And the author's final personal stance, optimist, pessimist.
They describe themselves as a pragmatic optimist. They compare ASI to other huge shifts, flight, splitting the atom, editing genes.
Things that felt both amazing and terrifying at the time.
Exactly. ASI is like those, the author feels, just bigger. Same mix of thrill and fear, amplified.
So hopeful, but with eyes wide open.
That's the tone. The very last thought from the sources. If we manage to keep our heads clear and our code audited,
Meaning stay rational and do the detailed safety work.
then the gentle singularity could live up to its name. It could be a smooth transition.
Which leaves us, and you the listener, with this final thought to Chiwan, straight from the source.
If this really happens, if intelligence becomes this abundant, unlimited resource, maybe our grandchildren will look back and wonder why anyone ever doubted that turning information into unlimited possibility was the most human decision we could possibly make.